area here. I'd like to introduce our moderator for this session is Gol Kalev. Mr. Kalev's background is in investment banking. He spent nearly 2 decades on Wall Street on mergers and acquisitions and capital raising in the United States and Europe. Mr. Kalev is a board member of the America-Israel Friendship League and chairman of the IAFL think tank, where he explores issues relating to Judaism and Zionism. He is also a journalist and commentator at the Jerusalem Post, where he writes about strategic issues affecting Israel, as well as about Europe and world affairs. Thank you so much, Gol, and really appreciate you moderating the session here.
Thank you, Joel. Well, good afternoon, and even though this is the last session, welcome again all to Jerusalem. I'd like to echo what other speakers have said, which is to congratulate Joel and Natasha for such a fascinating policy summit and with interesting thought-provoking issues. So I will talk a little bit about the Israeli technology sector, and then we will have a discussion with our guests from India, who are leaders in the Indian technology area. And to talk about the astonishing story of the Israeli technology sector is basically to talk about Zionism. As most of you know, for 18 centuries, Jews in the diaspora have prayed daily for their return to Jerusalem, have yearned for the possibility to return to their ancestral homeland. But it wasn't until the end of the 19th century and the arrival of Theodor Herzl that yearning started turning into a reality. And when Herzl founded political Zionism, he deliberated how is he going to convince world leaders and recruit them to this cause. He thought, should he go into their moral conscience? Should he go into a historical justification for the reestablishment of Israel? But he very quickly concluded that the Jewish state will only be established if the world needs it. And when he wrote his manifesto in 1896, he wrote, "The Jewish state will exist because it is the necessity of the world." And sure enough, 50 years later, the Jewish state was established, and today, another 70 years since, innovations that are produced here in Israel are affecting the lives of billions of people around the world, whether it's addressing famine by turning air into water, whether it's increasing longevity through biotech innovations, whether it's quite literally saving lives through telemedicine and through cutting-edge medical researchers. It seems that indeed today Israel has turned to be the necessity of the world. And that is recognized by leading technology companies around the US and around the world, many of which have significant research, almost all of them have significant research and development centers here in Israel. Cisco, IBM, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and in fact Israel is ranked #1 in the world in terms of R&D investment per capita. Israel is also the recipient of substantial venture capital money, about $5 billion over the last year, more than any other European country, and Israel is also then ranked #1 in the world in terms of venture capital investment per capita. And that's not surprising because there's a lot of investment opportunities in Israel. Israel has a lot of startups, more startups than anywhere else in the world outside of Silicon Valley. And once again, Israel is ranked #1 in terms of startups per capita. According to some statistics, Israel has more startups than people. That, to a large extent, is because of the very attractive ecosystem for developing such startups that exist in Israel, in Tel Aviv and Herzliya primarily, but also more and more here in Jerusalem and in other areas of Israel. And when you look at that ecosystem, it starts with a very strong culture of innovation. The audacity, risk-taking, entrepreneurial spirits of young Israelis, the dreams that are turning into apps and into internet companies. And this nest of innovation is supported by government policies that provide proper incentives and by academic centers that provide the research that is needed. And I know there's some people from Ariel universities and other places here. There is a lot of research that is happening in those universities and all sorts of external places that eventually gets translated into startups and into technological innovations. And also, the Israeli technological success is synergistic with other stories of success that have occurred in Israel over the last decade or two. Some of them are not completely obvious. For example, take wine. Until 10 or 20 years ago, Israeli wine was well-intentioned, but probably not your first or second choice. But in the late 90s, we had what we call here the Israeli wine revolution. Vineyards got replanted, new wineries have sprung up. There's 8 or 9 sub-regions within Israel. And now Israeli wines winning award after award after award after award in blind tasting competition throughout Europe. And people start liking Israel because of its wine. To be blunt, Israel is a fun place to be. And that is very important to foster creativity. And it's not just the great restaurants and bars that I hope you get to see after the conference here in Jerusalem and in Tel Aviv, but it is also the culture of debate and engagement between people, the sometimes robust discussion, and the sense of camaraderie and kind of the way we take care of one another, the culture of charity. All of this makes Israel, gives it its stature that it's known as the startup nation. And that is a process that has been occurring primarily over the last decade. But if we look into the next decade or two, what is the prospect for the startup nation at that time? Well, the trends around the world are such that support segments within technology that Israeli companies are very strong in. Artificial intelligence, robotics, drones, connectivity, Internet of Things, agricultural Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things. So the prospects for Israeli technology sector is very strong going into the next few years. And even in topics, some of the side effects of the technological innovation, cyber and defense, Israel, I believe, has about a quarter of the cyber startups in the world. So it's well positioned also when it comes to that. And speaking of defense, the Israeli military doesn't only provide the blanket of security that is very important in order for all those innovations to create, and provides also a social structure, because everybody goes to the army and there's an enormous amount of buy-in into the military. But the military is essentially one large incubators of ideas that later gets converted into private sector technology. And if we mentioned earlier Herzl's and his vision about that is coming true in these days in Israel, there was there's a resident of Jerusalem 2,500 years ago, Isaiah, that prophesied, and his prophecies are coming true, not only in terms of all the good things that are coming out of Zion, but also in quite literally Israel turning swords into plowshares. And those plowshares are affecting the lives of individuals all over the world, including in individuals that are our adversaries and hopefully our former adversaries. So all of that makes Israel technology sector very attractive, but it also elevates Israel geopolitical standings. We're in a policy conference, and while we talk a lot in technology about how technology is a disruptor in day-to-day life, how everything we're going to be doing is going to be affected by technology, from the way we shop to the way we commute to the way we socialize. Technology is also a disruptor when it comes to the relationship between nations. Countries with developed digital economies are likely to get elevated, and perhaps technology in the 21st century is what oil used to be in the 20th century. If you will, the Internet of Things is dictating more and more the diplomacy of things. It is likely to be, countries with strong technology are likely to be well positioned when it comes to alliances, when it comes to diplomatic negotiations, and when it comes to deterrence. We have a lot of people here from Europe, members of the European Parliament and think tank members, and all great supporters of Israel. But as you know, unfortunately, we have also those in Europe who are not particularly happy with the successes that have occurred here in the Jewish state and are seeking to boycott Israel or segments of the Israeli population. Last year, we had a speaker here in this conference that said that given everything that's happening in Israel and given that so much of the internet technology is being produced here in Israel, boycotting Israel is essentially boycotting the internet. But a year is a long time, and over the last year, I think it became evident that the world is moving into even more increased connectivity. Everything is technologized, and at the same time, Israel's stature within the technology world has been further elevated. So I think it is safe to say that today, boycotting Israel is not just boycotting the internet, by boycotting Israel is boycotting life.